Hey, hey, so happy that you're joining me, trying to get this straightened. Okay, we are in the book of Genesis and we are hitting chapter 24 today. There is so much in this chapter, like so much. So there are so many like just different characters and different angles that we're going to hit. So we are jumping into this. If you want to hit pause and run through it, it's kind of a long chapter, but make sure because of that you're not rushing through. You're not saying, oh, it's so long, let's just skim. No, read, be intentional, make this time so good just with you and God. Meet with him, open yourself up, and just grab a hold of all he has. So go for it, do that, have that special time with just you and your God. Okay, Lord, thank you. Um, Thank you for just the length and the height, breadth and the width of just who you are, of laying yourself out to us. Thank you for the way that you personally meet with us and you are fighting for each of us. There may be so many people involved in a situation, but you meet with us personally. You just love us so purely, so beautifully. I just pray that you open yourself up to us, that we're not rushing through, that we don't just skip over things, but that we truly are changed by this message and by all the ways that we can be challenged and encouraged and moved by you. Lord, just speak. Help us to listen today. Help us to be still, to not rush, and to just listen to your voice. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, chapter 24. This is talking about Isaac and Rebekah. Oh, okay. Guys, this is so good. So trusting that you read through all of that, all on your own, and got a grip on what was going on, I'm just going to quickly recap what it is at the beginning and how this starts off. So Abraham is getting to be old, and he is thinking, okay, I got to get things, in order. I got to take care of some things. He's clinging to what God told him, that God will bless him, that God will bless his descendants, that through his descendants, nations will be blessed. And so he's probably like, that can't really happen unless my son gets married, and starts having kids and having these descendants that the Lord is talking about. So Abraham gets his oldest, most faithful servant and has a little meeting with him, has his hand placed under his thigh. Now this, back in this culture, that is just a symbol of pinky swear, like totally more legit than that. But yeah, that was so random. Anyway, making a commitment, I promise to do this, and taking this was a very serious thing. So he placed his hand under Abraham's thigh, and in verse 3 it continues. It says, please place your hand under my thigh. And verse 3, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live. So reading that, I totally picked up on, yeah, Abraham he's living among the Canaanites. God has called him to live set apart, to walk before him, to be blameless, to be circumcised, to belong to the Lord. Yet he is living among the Canaanites. God is not making this super comfortable and easy for Abraham. He's not saying, okay, I got you and nothing's going to come against you and there's going to be no temptations and there's going to be no, this and that. He has him placed among the Canaanites, living in the land of Canaan, yet calling him out to say, love me, walk before me, live blamelessly, live set apart. And that calling is on us as well. We look around and sometimes life can be lonely, because those around us may not have Jesus Christ as their standard. They may not be using this word, this powerful book to stand upon and to walk in and to base all of our decisions and the way we do life based upon this word. That can be lonely sometimes, but you see this and it's encouraging that God called Abraham to go to Canaan and to live among the Canaanites, yet to live set apart, to allow others to see the goodness of God and the favor of God and the blessings and being obedient and in seeking the Lord. That's where it's at, and that's sometimes where he calls us to be. To stand our ground no matter what surrounds us, no matter what is among us. So, yes. So Abraham is saying to his servant, make sure that Isaac does not find a wife from among the Canaanites. He says, but you will go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac. So he's being very clear. Make sure, like, this is the one thing I want you to swear to me about, is that he does not find a wife of the Canaanites or in Canaan. Then the servant says, well, what if I go there and she doesn't want to come back with me? Do you want me to take Isaac there? And in verse 6, it says, then Abraham said to him in response to that question, beware that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send angels before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. So he is saying, if that woman does not go back, no matter what, do not take my son. And Abraham goes back to the very beginning, that first encounter with the Lord, when he said, go away, leave your father's household, leave your relatives, leave all that is comfortable, all that you have known, and follow me into the land where I will take you. That is where all this started. And Abraham is clinging to that and saying, you will not take him back there. God does not want him going back to those comforts and going back where everything is there and being content in that land, because I have called him to this land. I have brought you here where you can see this is your land. This is where Isaac needs to remain, because I will bless nations through him, through your descendants, with this land. This is the land that I'm giving to you. You must stay here. And he's being very adamant on, I know what God told me, and God said to leave that. So no, do not take him back there. We are to leave. We are to be among the Canaanites, being and belonging to God here in Canaan. So the servant then makes this commitment to him, places his hand under his thigh, says yes, yes, and okay. Then he is on his way. It says that he went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. In verse 12, love this, and this really shows the heart of the servant. It says, he said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. So he is intervening. He is taking this to God and saying, bless my master. It's not about him saying, oh, make sure that I'm right so that I can please my master, or make sure that, you help me in this and you do this and that for me. It's bless my master. Show your loving kindness to my master. Show your faithfulness to my master. It's this selfless, humble prayer that the servant is praying. Then it says, okay, so he's standing by a spring, and he speaks this, and he says, okay, Lord, let the woman who comes, as they come down and fill their water jugs, if I approach a woman and I say, give me a drink, the woman who gives me a drink and then waters my camels, she will be the one. Let her be the one that you have appointed, that you have chosen for my master. So he is saying this in verse 15. It says, before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who is born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had had relations with her. And she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then it says that the servant ran up to her and said exactly what he laid out to God. I mean, he was speaking specifics. He said, I will say this, and she will respond this way, and she will go overboard and do this, and all of this. So before he was even done speaking, he sees Rebekah, and she's coming down, and it says she's beautiful, and she's a virgin. They just speak with her in just this purity and this just, such just honor in who she is and the presence that she carries. And so he goes up to her and he says, please give me a drink. And of course, because God is so good like this and making connections and hearing our prayers and just having his hand all over the situation, then of course she says, lowers her jar, gives him a drink, and then says, I will water all of your camels. And he's sitting back watching, just probably in amazement, like, God, this is exactly what I asked. So he approaches her, seeing that this is all God, gives her a gold ring and bracelet signifying, hey, where, whose family do you belong to? This is kind of what's going on. I mean, giving those symbols are a huge sign of, hey, there's going to be a marriage where, you have been chosen. So then she runs back. She tells him her family. She runs back to her house. Let's see. Then the man bowed low. Yes. Takes her to her house. In verse 27, it says, he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers." So he is just acknowledging that God led him, that he got up and moved in obedience, and that God led him exactly where he needed to be. Because again, that's who God is, and he leads us according to his way, according to what is best, according to who he has chosen, knowing that this is where power is just going to be released in this marriage, with this woman, in this place, with this family, that God is going to move, and it's all God. Then they started talking about a little bit of Rebecca's family. So they mentioned that Rebecca's brother is Laban, and we will speak more of Laban later on in the next few videos, the next few chapters. So, but just bringing up this connection with Rebecca and Laban being brother and sister. Then the servant goes in and speaks to her family. They receive him, they bring him in, they see the bracelets, they're getting excited. Then they come in, they sit down to eat, and the servant says, "I can't eat until I tell you what's going on." And so he relays everything. That's why this chapter is so long. He relays everything that was just done. So he says, "This is who I am. This is who my master is. This is how God has been working in him and moving him, and what he's blessed him with, and how he is adamant on Isaac, his son, marrying a woman from his family and not from the Canaanites," and just expressing like, this is where we're at, this is how we live, and this is what we're inviting your daughter into, and wanting to bring her back. And then he just relayed everything. And I told the Lord that the woman who would come and offer me a drink and my camels, that she was the one. And it's so neat thinking that Rebecca is listening to all of this. She is hearing the servant lay out truly that the Lord's hand is all over the situation and what he is doing, and how he has made these connections, and how he has led him here, brought him here to her home, to that time, that exact time when she was bringing the water. I mean, that's what God does, and just leaves us in amazement and being overwhelmed. And she is hearing all this, and it's working in her heart and in her mind, and just what she is going to choose to do in regards to this. And again, the servant just brings out that he bowed low and worshiped the Lord when all this happened with Rebecca, and seeing just the way God was doing this. Again, he brought up who had guided me in the right way, so that God brought him there, for that exact time to see this. Verse 51 says, "Here is Rebekah before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken." When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before the Lord. Then he brought in just articles of silver and gold, and all of these just precious things, and these garments, and gave them to Rebekah, gave them to her family, just as this blessing. Then they stayed overnight. Then they rose in the morning. They were getting ready to leave. And it says in verse 55, "But her brother and her mother said, 'Let the girl stay with us a few days, say 10. Afterward, she may go.'" In verse 56, the servant replies like this. He said to them, "Do not delay me. Since the Lord has prospered my way, send me away, that I may go to my master." So the mother and the brother are like, we're not ready, like, we're never going to see her. Like, you're going to take her. Let her stay for 10 days. Just let her stay. Let us say our goodbyes. We're not quite ready for you to do this. And then the servant responds and says, "God's all over this. Like, God has blessed this journey. Like, don't delay this. I need to get back to my master. We need to let God just keep moving. Like, don't delay this." So they're pulling, no, stay. No, we got to go. Then I love this. In verse 57, it says, "And they said, 'We will call the girl and consult her wishes.' Then they called Rebekah and said to her, 'Will you go with this man?' And she said, 'I will go.'" Oh, love that. So even thinking that she's hearing, she's being exposed, she is seeing that this is God calling her, this is God setting this up and orchestrating this, establishing this. And she simply says, I will go, knowing that she is going to leave her family. She's going to leave all that she knows, but she says, I will go. May we be so ready, so willing, because we're so overwhelmed with what God is seeing. We're so amazed with what we are choosing to see God doing, and trusting in his goodness, and trusting just his direction and how he works and moves in us. Then jumping down in verse 64, it says, Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from her camel. So at this time they leave. They're journeying back home to the land of Canaan where Isaac is. So she lifts up her eyes and she sees him. She gets off of her camel, and she said to the servant in verse 65, Who is that man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, He is my master. Then she took her veil and covered herself. So she sees him at a distance. Isaac, it says that he was out just walking the land, meditating. I love that. Just he's out there trying to figure things out. She is ready, willing, knowing what she's coming into. There's this connection that's about to be taking place, and you see both of them in this readiness, or at least this willingness to see, this willingness to move, and this readiness to be a part of whatever God is allowing this to be part of, or making this a part of. So she gets down, covers herself, takes her veil. In 66, it says, The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Oh, so good. So there are so many characters in this. And what the Lord just told me at the end, where it says, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So God is doing so much. But this wasn't just for one person. This wasn't just for Rebekah and bringing her into this just family of incredible blessing, of this family that is going to be the beautiful start of all nations being blessed by her, by Isaac. This isn't just her bringing her into this wealth and bringing her into this prosperity and all of this that God is bringing her into. It wasn't just for her. And it wasn't just for Abraham, and that he was adamant on, get Isaac a good wife, a wife from my family and not from the Canaanites, so that there's stability and there's just peace, and there's God's hand in that. There's God's blessing. It wasn't just for Abraham. It wasn't just for the servant, how the servant reached out and prayed to God and said, bless my master. This was a blessing. This all worked out according to how God planned, but it wasn't just for Rebekah. It wasn't just for Abraham. It wasn't just for the servant. It wasn't just for Isaac. It says that Isaac was comforted through this, that God brought this beautiful woman full of purity, and she was a virgin, and it wasn't just for Isaac to be comforted after his mother's death, but in all of those things. The situation was one big situation. It was one story, one thing that happened that involved all these people. But God did something special for each of them. He met with them personally with where they were at, and Isaac needing comforted, and Abraham being assured, and Rebekah being just blessed and brought into all of this, and his servant just being comforted and encouraged, and all of those, and knowing that he was going to come back with the blessing of God all over. I mean, we have to see that God, all of these situations that happen in anything, big or small, that he is doing what he does best and fully capable of in all of his love and power for each of us. He's meeting us in our own ways, with where we're at, our own personal, intimate ways, all at the same time, and allowing the situation to just be completely surrounded by who he is. That is so unbelievable. That is so God. That is so the heart of God, how he just pours out all at once, yet so uniquely, so personally. And one thing that stood out to me in this story too is about It's about this servant. It's not about being an Abraham and making sure that we're the lead. We're this main guy that everyone knows and everyone sees. It's clear that the favor is all over him, that he's, leading the pack. This servant was so faithful. This servant was so obedient. May we be like this servant and what's best for our leaders, for our pastor, for our parents, for our husbands, our wives. May we be that and be willing to be behind the scenes and allowing God and seeking the Lord for those people and for our children and for our husbands, for our friends, for our churches. May we be that servant and not have to be the one seen and the one in the front lines, but may we be obedient in whatever position that we have. If it wasn't for that servant, who knows what would have happened? Who knows? If it weren't for his obedience and his seeking the Lord and his humility, that's beautiful. So read through that again. There's so much in that. Place yourself in those positions and thinking, may we be like Rebecca, pure like this, willing to go. May we be like the servant, willing to pray for our people and wanting them to do even better than us. May we place yourselves in those situations. See what God wants to teach you through each of those characters, through each of those lines and the ways that he met them intimately. Thank you for walking this out with me. Thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm letting it soak in my heart. Let it soak into yours. Keep pursuing him. That's all I got for you today. So hope to see you soon.